First of all, thank you all for joining me on an early Monday morning. I know things always are crazy coming off the weekend, but I always think Monday mornings are kind of the best day to grab a little bit of nugget of knowledge that you're able to kind of use throughout the week and hopefully longer than just the week. A little bit about me. I'm Catherine Barnett with LoanFit. I own and operate LoanFit. We're a brokerage. And about, I would say 2015, I went through my own divorce and realized just the discrepancy of information that my attorneys knew versus the information that I knew on a lending standpoint. And I'm going to try to cover most of it, but not all of it can be covered in one sitting because there's a lot. And even to this day, every day I'm sending little nuggets to attorneys going, hey, did you know? And the thing is that attorneys in their wheelhouse and their law, they know their law, right? But they don't know our rules and how we work with the borrower in order to protect homeownership goals. So knowing that there is this need and this discrepancy of information, I made it kind of a thing to be a reference of information, be a source for strategy, to be a source to help people protect their homeownership goals. And to believe it or not, and unfortunately, a lot of this is pro bono for me. So I deal with probably 20 to 30 divorce cases a month. And I would say maybe an eighth of them come to fruition. And what I am finding is that those that I've helped a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, they're slowly into the position of buying or selling or refinancing or so forth. So I'm hoping over time, I mean, we're all in the business to do business, right? But I've developed great friendships and great humans that I've had an opportunity to talk and protect their overall homeownership goals. And so divorce lending and real estate in general is not a cash cow. It is I always classify things in my life as high maintenance, high profit, high maintenance, low profit, low maintenance, low profit, and low maintenance, high profit. And divorces is definitely a high maintenance, low profit category. You're spinning quite a bit of your wheels, especially in the lending side, quite a bit of your wheels cultivating relationships, but I just kind of pull it as a pay it forward type situation. And I think on the real estate side of thing, it's still going to be high maintenance, but by when they start working for you, it's going to be a little bit more higher profit. So we'll go over a little bit of everything. I'm going to share my screen here. And if I can just make sure everybody is muted. And when we get to the end, I'm going to open it up for discussions and such so that we can cover any questions. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. I already kind of did the intro. Again, my position is to protect folks' homeownership goals while going through a divorce. Your position is the same. So especially when working with divorces and just trying to navigate them. Desired outcomes on this little workshop is going to be the increased understanding of patience and compassion to support divorces, awareness on how to problem solve and think outside of the box and tap into the resources you may or may not be using right now. Recognize for a positive change in this business. There's a lot of people, you know, I think when there's a niche anywhere, there's a lot of people that aren't really good at those niches. That's why they call them niches. So it's recognizing that in this real estate profession that we have a niche for a reason, as it's complicated to navigate. All right. And I have a little chat. I just wanted to make sure it's okay, that we are all in here. Okay. and the knowledge of where your role as a real estate agent plays in the overall divorce process. It is greater than you think, but not as much as you think. Meaning your individual role in this is you're not doing as much, but your role in it is great as far as being a connector, and we'll go over that as well. Divorce facts and stats. You know, I had to update my presentation. My presentation was probably about 3 years old. A lot of your divorce stats are about 2 years old. I played a lot into the 2021, 2022 arena. Surprisingly, divorces have gone down a smidge since about 5 years ago. So there's basically 72 divorces every hour, and that's confirmed divorces, not necessarily filings. Filings are in the millions. And I would say about 1/4 of them come to fruition for that year. The average length of a marriage that ends in a divorce is 8 years. This is one thing that has changed since my presentation in 5 to 6 years ago, and it once was 12 to 14 years. So our marriages are getting shorter and shorter. The average length of a marriage, 8 years, 60% of the average age is 30 years old. 60% of divorces are individuals aged between 25 and 39. Our baby boomers, divorces are still one of the fastest rising divorces. Adults 50 and over who have divorced in the past year, about a third had been in a prior marriage for at least 30 years, which, you know, there's statistics right now that you're almost double likely to divorce in your second marriage, which is kind of crazy. So I always tell people, when you're going through one divorce, just stay in touch with them, because they might have another one in which they're going to need your assistance. Divorces are down as fewer people are marrying and remarrying. So that's kind of, you know, when it comes down to the divorce filings, sure, they're down, but also people aren't getting married like they used to. They're not remarrying after a divorce. So that's what's changing that statistic. I don't think breakups are changing any bit slower. I just think the classification of a divorce is. And then I had enter in the poll of what the 2 top filing months are. So I'll let you guys build that. We already know March is one of them. And who says Valentine's doesn't have any weight? Just joking, but maybe, you know, where people are just fed up that, you know, you got February being their love month, and it didn't go so well, and then coming off of holidays and such, and then, you know, March being the highest filing. So as far as states that have the highest number of filings and who have the lowest, surprisingly, Nevada has the highest, and it's not always been that way. I think it was Arkansas for a while that had the highest, and Nevada is now the highest. Colorado is 15 in the states, Arizona is 20, and Massachusetts is the lowest. So they have the lowest filings per capita, you know, obviously Massachusetts being much smaller than Nevada, but they have the lowest filings per capita. As far as an agent goes, as far as what divorcing couples need from an agent, they want to know their equity, how they can maximize their equity. You guys have got to be super sensitive. You have the unfortunate thing of dealing with both parties. I hate saying that. As a lender, I typically deal with just one side unless it's amicable. If it's amicable, I deal with both sides, which it's amicable, so it makes my life a lot better. But you guys, sometimes by the time it gets to the point to where you're selling a marital home, you're dealing, it's probably, if it's not amicable, it's ugly. It's usually one or the other, right? So sensitivity is required. Do not allow the home to become a vessel for expression, frustration, or aggression. You guys have got to keep a level head. You are not a mediator. Do not mediate, but set boundaries, support a productive and healthy process, provide problem solving options, not one size fits all. And that's where knowing a few nuggets, it's awesome, but tapping in people who have experience knowing more, because the strategy may be different depending on the situation. And lastly, what we're going to talk about most is, as an agent, you guys are the connector in this game. You guys are definitely the connector, and they're going to need you for resources. So we'll go over some of those needs. First of all, people ask, when should I get in touch with a lender? Yesterday. So if you own a home, or you're hoping to own a home through your divorce, meaning you're getting some set of either equity on a home you do or you don't own, or a retirement or a lump sum, etc., and you want to use that towards home ownership, the first person you need to connect them to is a divorce specialized lender, period. Because I often get them when it's too late. So I often get folks when the separation agreement has already been filed and it's too late to make changes because they're just waiting for the divorce decree. So typically how most divorces go, and keep in mind, every state is different, but they're filing some sort of a dissolution of marriage. And that dissolution of marriage kind of starts the clock in the process for them. Keep in mind, in Colorado, it's 91 days for a completed divorce. So they have a cooling off period. And to be honest with you, Arizona is almost the same in the sense of it takes forever to get from start to finish in Arizona. So they kind of have their own cooling off period. But, so we're filing the dissolution of marriage, and a lot can happen in that dissolution of marriage. There are many cases where things are amicable until they're not. Stuff starts coming out of the woodworks of infidelity, or as they're giving financial disclosures of spouses stealing from each other. This is where things get rocky, is during this process. And so at that point, there are many steps that they have to perform, including parenting plan, child support, alimony, mediation, who gets what, and then it goes into a formal separation agreement and parenting plan. And we can use that. That is enough for us to move forward with any process of a loan. And then it goes into a final decree where the judge signs off on it if court is not needed. So if I can strategize with these folks on what their homeownership goals are, it's going to set the tone for what kind of equity payout they want, what kind of retirement pay that they want, what kind of child support that they need to qualify, and same with alimony. So there's a lot of moving parts in that I need to be one of the first to talk to. Next one is going to be title. We'll go over title a little bit. And you might be surprised that insurance, we're going to see a way that insurance plays into that. The appraiser, obviously, will go over that as well as your own CMAs. And lastly, the most least common tapped in entity is going to be your inspector and contractors. So we'll go over that a little bit more. One thing to just keep in mind, 56% of all divorces go unrepresented, guys. So a lot of these people are doing the legwork themselves, and you're the next best thing because they don't have anybody connecting and making sure that they're being protected. And that's both parties just being protected of any unforeseen things. And you'll hear me repeat this. In a court of law, housing decisions are permanent. Very seldom, less than 0.01% of them can be turned. And you have to prove a huge fraudulent case to do so. So keep that in mind. Any of these decisions and assistance that we're providing, once it's entered in the courts, it is permanent. One thing when you're kind of getting together with a lot of these folks before you start connecting them, more than likely you're going to start with one. Eventually, you're going to have to meet with two. Set time limits for joint meetings, like literally book a space so you only have like 1 hour or 1 hour and 30 minutes in which you have to leave. And keep in mind, you're not an attorney, but your time is also not free. So make sure you're doing enough work with at least one of the parties to understand what their goals are and to see if this is something that you can be of assistance with. Have an agenda of questions, keep it very neutral, and then send the agenda ahead of time of some of the questions that you have and fact-finding information. Creating emotional space, there's always back and forth, and there's just a lot of pain and a lot of hurt, and just try to set the bar, set your boundaries when you're meeting them up front, that you're not a counselor, that this is your profession and you don't want to overstep anybody else's profession. And well, nobody wants to be a counselor, right? So, dang it, it's going to move on me. Sorry. Trying to navigate my screens. I always fail at Zoom at some point. Anyways, don't mediate. Venting is one thing, but your language should remain neutral. Avoid expressing how you feel. It's really, really hard. And sometimes I'm guilty of it on my own, is that, we often want to tell our own stories because we love the relatability, right? We want to relate to them of like, oh, I empathize with you. But be very careful in that space. That was definitely something I screwed up early on. And so just be careful in that space of you. I would share situations, but not your situation. It could still be your situation, but it wasn't you. Okay. Key questions. Some of the main concerns for a client is going to be, can they afford to keep the house? Focus on preserving the home ownership eligibility in the long term rather than the short term, resulting in keeping the marital home. A home is a major cash expense, so we also want to review, can they handle the taxes? Can they handle the repairs? Can they handle the utilities all on their own? Is far beyond the mortgage payment. During the divorce, settling negotiations should be on maximizing their finances by making sure they have enough cash for living expenses, be it between alimony, child support, jobs, etc. And a lot of people love the clean break of selling the marital home. But right now, as we're going to figure out, selling the marital home is not as easy as it once was. And that has a lot to do with interest rates. Some things that the courts look at, Colorado is a common state. Arizona is a community state. They both, be it if they have the word state or not, they both run very similar in the sense of marital assets are marital assets and marital debts are marital debts. Community states are, I would say, a little bit more forgiving in what you brought into the marriage is what you keep going out of the marriage. But even if it's something you brought in, if there's a marital, let's say a couple has, one person has their own home that they're going to turn into a rental, and then they're buying a home together. Well, the person who had that home turning it into a rental, that is their home. But if the person, if the joining spouse has helped pay for that mortgage payment, now they have an invested interest into that rental. So it starts to convolute things to where now they're like, well, I should get part of the equity since I have helped in part of the house. So that's where things get sticky. It is not a lot of people think it's just a 50-50, and it's not just a 50-50. However, the courts do kind of start there, where the courts will go, okay, and even when they're, I say courts, but even when they're dealing with the division of marital asset just on the simple form of, okay, who gets what, and they're just talking it out, and there's not attorneys involved. What the courts look for is that they go, okay, here's the value of the house with X amount of dollars, say it's $500, here's the value of the cars, here's the value of any other assets. They add it all together, and then they do it on the side of things of, here's the value of the debt, and they subtract it, and then the difference between that is like a 50-50 split. It doesn't go that way, but that's kind of the initial starting guideline of what the courts will do. And then the sticky stuff starts to become separated out, like a rental that was brought into the marriage, or assets brought into the marriage. Inheritance is also one of those things not considered, but if you convolute inheritance into the assets, it now is considered. So it gets definitely sticky there. And what we're going to try to do is give value on the housing side of things, but we can't really give true advice on how they need to divide everything up. The best advice I can do is just if I can make sure you guys are all muted, that would be
Sorry.
great. That's okay.
Sorry.
The best advice I can give is just making sure that that if you know the rules of like the whole 50-50, you can give that as a guidance, but they need to consult with either an attorney. There are mediators out there which will work with both parties. So those are great when it's amicable or somewhat amicable. And they're just trying to get through the process and make sure that they're getting through the process under the right logistics and path, basically. And so, and then there's also free like court appointed attorneys through each county that they can work through as well, where they kind of do pro bono work at the courts. So starting off with the lending strategies. So I could have written a book on this, on the different lending strategies I've done for divorces on getting really, really creative. When I looked at my old presentation, because it's been a few years since I've done this, it's been 4, I think. It was definitely pre-COVID. I think it was 2018, 2019. We were still discussing, potential foreclosures, bankruptcies due to a divorce, et cetera. We're not seeing a lot of that right now. And that's because a lot of folks have a lot of equity, right? And so we're not quite seeing that as much, but what we are seeing is more than ever, the talk of refinancing is hotter and harder, okay? 84% of your homeowners are under 5% interest rate, and more than 30% of them are under 3%. And so the strategy of like, okay, we'll just do a cash out refinance 2 years ago is not there anymore. Also, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have tightened the belts on cash out refinances, and they've tightened the belts on refinances in general, meaning higher rates and stricter guidelines. And so we're getting a little bit more creative on going, can we avoid refinancing? Are there other ways? And I once worked with a client where him and his soon-to-be ex were super amicable, and he made a statement that has stuck with me, and I've worked hard to encourage other clients to do the same. And he said, although my wife and I are no longer together, we are still parents and we are still building family wealth. And I loved that. When they get in the mindset of family wealth, they're looking at going, how can we protect each other? And when you have this many people under 5% interest rates, and rates right now are in the high 6s, it doesn't, for, let's say the woman wants to keep the house and is trying to qualify to get that house. Well, if her payment is going up dramatically, that is something that's taking into consideration for child support and alimony. And so if we can avoid having her refinance to pay out another party, it's going to help the overall situation and the wealth of the family wealth, right? And sometimes even if it's not amicable, there's ways that we may be able to pay out the other party without refinancing. And so one of them is assumption. Your FHA, VAs, and USDA loans, those loans are assumable. They have to be approved with the servicing company, not through someone like me, unfortunately. They have to qualify. They have to qualify on the original terms. And so that could be one possible avenue, a really good, smart avenue. Unfortunately, conventional is rare that we will see the servicing company accept that. I would say out of 100, I probably have had maybe 2 that have gotten conventional to do that. And that's because they're also trying to, I think servicing companies are like, well, we're trying to protect our asset as well. They already own the debt and they want to keep the debt, and they bought that debt hoping that it was going to extend for 30 years. Okay, so that may be an option. I tell them always to look into it. Unlike, 5 years ago, we have people sitting in a lot of equity right now. So we're not seeing foreclosures and short sales the way that we were. If push comes to shove and they have to sell, people are selling. Okay. If the home is awarded to the other party, if it's awarded in the courts, through court documentation, basically, the lender does not consider it as a cash out. Not all loan officers know this. And the difference in rate is about 1/4 to 0.5%, depending on credit score. Could be even higher depending on credit score, debt to income ratio, which is now a thing. We have to determine debt to income ratio into our interest rates, and loan to value is going to be another factor. So if it's awarded, it's not a cash out. There are strategies though. Let's say we have a client that has, there's $100,000 of equity that she owes to the other party. And so there's ways that we now can get that equity through the courts. But the minute we throw debt or home improvements in there, it's now a cash out. So I've strategized different verbiage that allows them to accomplish paying off their debt, kind of getting away from this situation kind of scot-free in some cases, as well as improvements. And so it's just a strategy to see which ways are going to work, right? And I've come up with several ways of working with both the attorneys and non-attorneys and title companies to make sure that those are fulfilled. One of the biggest hesitations for most clients is, I want you to refinance because my name is still on the debt. And if it can be, usually this happens in an amicable situation, but sometimes we get folks who are more understanding where they put a timeline of, I need you to refinance within 3 years, always a timeline on everything, but refinance within 3 years. This is how I need you to double check that you're paying the mortgage on time. Because if the house is awarded to the other party, I do not have to count that house against them. So as long as it's paid on time, it's not hurting their credit, which is hard. But if they trust each other to make payments on time or notify each other when that's not going to happen, to where you can put in the separation agreement that let's say it's 3 years that they have to refinance, and at the 3-year mark or within that 3-year mark, if they ever have a problem making payment, they have to notify the other party within 15 days. And that other party has the option of making the payment to protect credit, but then the house has to be listed within 30 days. So there could be consequences enforced by the courts if that was to happen to protect credit. And it's coaching our clients going, okay, if we're going to do this and offer some leniency to not have to sell or refinance so quickly, these are the things you need to have protected. And a lot of attorneys don't get this part. So I've done a lot of education around that. Any other debt that is awarded to the other party, I also do not have to count. Now, creditors all do. They're late, it goes on both credit cards. Both credit reports. So they're going to want to set timelines in which they need to refinance that debt out of their name. Again, there are also ways to include debt and repairs in equity payout. That's something we'll talk a little bit more of when we're tapping in inspectors. And then going back to lending strategies, can they keep and afford the home? Strategize solutions with child support, alimony, separate maintenance. I say alimony, that's a term that's not used any longer, but that's the term we all know. So they use separate maintenance and debt payoff. And then again, we help set guidelines for accomplishing their goals. Alimony and separate maintenance. A few things have changed back in 2017. They felt that it used to be that the person paying alimony was a deduction and the person getting alimony had to pay taxes on it. And they realized that that really hurt the family unit, basically. And so now nobody gets any benefit as far as they don't get to, they don't have to pay taxes necessarily on the alimony. I guess that is a benefit, but they don't have to, the party paying it doesn't get any value of paying it, meaning they don't get a tax deduction, right? So alimony now, unlike child support, alimony is a deduction in income, not an actual liability, which could actually be much less by half. So if you have somebody paying $2,000 in alimony, I only really, depending on the overall situation, may only need to count half of it against him because it's a deduction of income, not a liability. So that thing has helped a little bit. Again, not all lenders. I was one of them. That was a lesson learned that, you know, you're doing this for so long. You're like, oh, the laws changed. I didn't realize that it was a deduction of income and not a debt. So just something to keep in mind when you have somebody dealing with high alimony payments or just trying to qualify in general. That's something you can ask the other lender and go, hey, is this something you're considering? Not that you guys don't have enough to think about. Question 2 is going to be, can you afford to sell the house? In most cases, selling the house is going to put your client in a better position. Right now, the answer to that is probably yes. But again, everybody's sitting with these low interest rates. The houses that are on the market right now are because people have to sell, divorce being one of those reasons why somebody would have to sell. And so this was very, very common 3 years prior, pre-COVID. Just list the house and sell it. It was either list the house and sell it or refinance it. And neither one of these answers are easy right now. These were easy answers 3 years ago. And right now, with rates being where they're at, they're not as easy. So we have to make sure to weigh out the situation and see if we can help reason with our clients on providing better solutions, which may not be selling, which may not be refinancing. We can look at doing a home equity line of credit. We can look at taking out of retirement to pay off the other party. There's other ways that this money can come from. I even see sometimes where people will wait 3 years to be able to refinance or pay out anybody. So there's different solutions we can run across and we can analyze for them. If the other spouse is keeping the house, we'll talk more about this, is going to be obtaining an appraisal. When things are amicable, CMAs are great. I have one right now where they have 2 CMAs spot on, and the divorce is already final, so this is sticky. 2 CMAs spot on, and then his realtor is like, oh, I can sell it for a lot more. And so now he wants to sell it for a lot more. But now, and there's some serious major home improvements. And so if you guys can mute yourself, that'd be great.
Let me call you back in a little bit.
There's some serious home improvements that need to be made, that need to be considered in the divorce and the separation agreement, and it wasn't. And the only thing the separation agreement says is that she has to refinance the home, and that's it. So that might be our only out, is that she has to refinance the home where she may not have to sell, but she may not qualify. So they may have to sell, in which they're back to square one and they can't really change anything. So now they have to work together. So that's the importance of just helping them get things very, very clear and in writing. Again, we're not attorneys, but this is our wheelhouse, because the consequences of that, it can be severe. And in her case, she's got an uphill battle because of the condition of the property and what the separation agreement says. So again, just helping them come up with a true value. An appraisal may be our best aspect, although both you and the appraiser are the boots on the ground. The appraiser is the one that the courts seem fit. So if the courts, you know, somebody is going, the house is worth this, and no, it's not worth this, and blah, 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 the courts will take the appraisal over a CMA. But I have seen the courts take a CMA when parties only present a CMA. Okay. First one, tapping your title company in. A reminder, decision of the Division of Housing is permanent. And so I can only tell you the amount of horror stories I have when the title company is not tapped in. We need to make sure you're doing having them do a title search on everybody, both parties and the houses, to make sure of any liens that could be on the home. Tax liens don't always show up on homes. There are several, or on credit. Most liens don't show up on credit. And so I do suggest everybody when you're disclosing financials is to get a credit report. And while you're still married, you can pull credit on your spouse. So get a credit report so that you know what's on that credit, because you need to make sure you know what's in your name. But doing a title search is crucial. Don't let your clients get caught with liens that wasn't found initially, that were found when they go to refinance. And again, I could tell you horror stories, but the major one was the gentleman was awarded a house. He had to pay out X amount of equity. I think it was like $100 and something odd thousand. Had to pay out X amount of equity to the other spouse. And that was written in, and he had 6 months to do it. Otherwise they would have to sell the house. Well, that come to find out, the other party, she had a $250,000 tax lien that she supposedly was not aware of. Okay. So she had a $250,000 tax lien. Because the court said that he had to pay her out that money, he had to pay that money out and the tax lien, because it wasn't found and they couldn't prove that it was fraud. She said she wasn't aware of it. And so, and he went to court with this, and the court said, sorry, we didn't find this out. We weren't aware of this. And the house did not have $350,000 worth of equity, and it foreclosed. So it foreclosed. Neither one of them really won in that aspect, but he definitely lost because he lost his own equity in it as well. So so tax liens are huge. Just make sure that they're doing they're searching. And this is something that most borrowers and realtors, my realtor never asked me to tap into that. Most realtors are not checking into, not realtors, attorneys, sorry. Attorneys are not checking into. And actually most realtors, when they go to list a property or even consult listing a property in a case of a divorce, they're not thinking about liens against the property. So that's something we definitely have to think about. Appraisal, determining value. I have plenty of appraisers that I work with. We also have kind of a short version of an algorithm property report that we're happy to help accompany your CMAs as far as supporting your CMAs. Like I said, CMAs can be a great route, especially in the amicable one. Like I have one right now where she did a CMA and then he got a CMA, and then they're pretty darn close. And so they're like, okay, we're right in line. But when we're going to have the ones that dramatically are different from one party to the other, it's going to require an appraisal. So just make sure you've got some resources. Again, I have resources. You probably have your own. But be ready to tap in your appraisers if needed. Work with your lender though, because there's no good reason why they would get an appraisal if they have to refinance within 6 months. You might as well go through the lender, which your first objection from the other party is that, how do I know they're looking out for my best interest? And well, when it comes down to an appraiser, they don't care. We have to go through a round robin. We don't have anybody in our back pocket for that case. And it is completely it's completely third party related. So I think that's better than any possible route we could go. But it would make more sense to not have to get 2 appraisals if you can get away with it. Why hire an inspector? So I would say maybe 10% of my clients hire an inspector. Most of mine that come to me through other means, like through a realtor or an attorney or what so forth, and they've already gone through the separation agreement, never hire an inspector. But some of my most successful outcomes have been when an inspector is involved. Hire an inspector. When you get an appraisal, that appraisal alone does not support the condition of the property. Because you all know, I mean, maybe FHA, right? FHA may have certain condition requirements, but we're likely not going to be getting an FHA appraisal on this. And same for VA. But then on your conventional appraisals, everything is as is, and they're not really considering the condition. But agents, you know, as well as I do, you get into a hot mess. You're like, well, I really need you to do this. I need you to do that. I need you to do this before we list it and get this amount of money for it. So the inspector helps tie that in, getting a really good home inspection done, undercovers things that need to be done to list and for the listing to perform the best, even if they're not listing it, because this is it's one, if one of the party keeps the house, it's one of their assets that they need to make sure, okay, if I'm paying you out this money, I still have all these repairs to make this home worth what you think it is. So this helps with the conversation of, you know, these are some honeydews that never got done, and I don't want to be stuck with it just because I'm paying you out on the equity of the home. And so I had this happen to where it was a couple that had 5 boys and like 3 dogs, and they wrecked this place. And she was very adamant of the home is worth this. This is what my agent told me it was worth. And I want, you know, I want $120,000. And so this guy's like, okay, in order to sell this home, there's no way I'm going to get this kind of money based on the condition of the home. So we hired an inspector, and he had about $55,000 worth of cosmetic damage just to get this home where she thought it was going to be. And so got through the inspector, hired contractors with a bid, with bids. They got 2 from each. It went all the way to court, and the court even knocked it another 20,000 on top of it because there were things beyond cosmetic. So she ended up walking away with about $40,000 worth of equity, not 100. And so this guy was able to keep, and the way we structured it too is that he was able to get money, cash, to make those repairs on the home in the divorce. So in ways of refinancing. So it ended up being a win-win for him, maybe not for her, but what she was trying to do was unrealistic. And so you were able to support his home ownership goals. Again, you know, this is where you guys have the tougher job, to where you're managing both clients, and usually I'm managing one when it's not amicable. And then there's some cases where people don't realize what's going on in their house that is going on in their house. I would be one of those people where I'm oblivious to certain maintenance things. It's just not my wheelhouse. Not that I'm getting a divorce, just not that my wheelhouse. Clue. Most people don't have a clue about Clue, except for BJ Hill on here. I think I got another insurance agent on here. But Clue is huge. It's not as crazy as it used to be, because your insurance companies have done better to make sure that on big ticket items, the mortgage company is listed on there and both parties are listed on there. But oftentimes you have people who will just sign the spouse's name with no problem and cash things. And so your non-big ticket items, people will sign their name to things that are just cashed, and nobody knew that the work hadn't been done. And those are on your smaller items. But then also the insurability of a home is based on a Clues report, and only the seller and insurance company can request a Clues. And a Clues stays with the person for 7 years, and that's the amount of claims that they're making. And it stays with the house for 5 years. The dollar amount of the claim is less important than the amount of claims, and that could put the home at risk of being uninsurable. So we want to know that when we go to sell a home, especially, you know, keep in mind, divorces all have funky reasons why things lead to a divorce. You have anywhere between money issues, gambling issues, addiction issues, infidelity issues. There's a whole slew. And when people get desperate, they pull out desperate means in order to suffice any habit or what so forth. So keep that in mind. What we're trying to help our clients do is undercover and make sure to protect them of any risks left outside of the divorce that's not protected after the divorce, meaning housing being permanent. Some credit mishaps and sabotage. Just want to briefly talk about that. First of all, when you get married or you get unmarried, your credit is not impacted. I do love that meme that says marry with someone with a good credit, because with your significant other with good credit, because it means sign if I can't is what it spells out. So that always cracks me up. But being married or unmarried does not impact your credit. But, you know, things get intense with folks. And if we're trying to help people meet their home ownership goals, and you have one party throwing their hands up and going, I'm not making the mortgage payment, I'm not paying any debt, because we see that, then it is strategizing with the other party on at this point, they probably may need to get an attorney, but strategizing with the other party about their risk levels if they have a mortgage late, if they have any credit late. And a mortgage late could be 70 points on somebody's credit score. So we really want to dive in with them and just make sure, okay, if it's not amicable, what is amicable? What have they agreed to, if anything? And, you know, it is trying to protect their credit is also going to impact their home ownership goals. So even any lates that happen before the divorce is final is on both of them, period. Even if the house is awarded to the other party, okay? Any lates happening after the divorce is final is taken into consideration. So if you have the divorce final in March and she gets the house and she ends up late in June and he's trying to purchase, it's going to kill his credit. But there are lenders that will allow for a manual underwrite and will consider that okay, it was done afterwards and not count it against him. Unfortunately, it's underwritten as a manual underwrite, which is underwritten as crappy credit. So they are going to take the hit on that. But that's where I go, putting deadlines and trying to walk away and leverage the equity, trying to walk away debt-free from joint credit is crucial. So that if you have a borrower who is going to make 100,000 of the equity, you want to dictate or have them dictate that this marital debt, this car, auto loan, whatever it is paid off or refinanced prior to being paid out that equity. So you can have title instructed per the court orders that the car is to be paid off, the credit card is to be paid off, or for title to verify that the car is no longer in that borrower's name prior to equity payout. So you can set things up in the courts if you guys are agreeing. And if it goes to court, it is something that the judge will allow. You just got to bring it up. If there's no dates around it, then there's no dates around it, and the judge just accepts it as is. I can't tell you how many times I see it show in there, the other party is awarded the auto and she's late on her auto now every single month, but they never set a timeline in which she has to refinance the auto. And if she doesn't refinance, if there is a timeline and she doesn't refinance the auto, he can take her back to court and have her sell the auto, or he can take possession of the auto. There's many consequences, but if you don't set dates and consequences, there's nothing enforceable. And I don't say this as you guys to being acting attorneys. I say this as some of the advice that I tell people to look out for as well, just as like, look out for this. You need to have a timeline on this. This isn't an open-ended book. The other thing too, that, when it comes down to equity payout, that I've been very diligent in advising my clients, determine the value now and stick to it. Even if the equity payout isn't for 3 years, right? Let's say they don't have to sell or refinance for 3 years. You want the equity amount to be set at the time of the divorce, period. And a lot of people are like, well, what if the values go down? I get that. We're more likely to see values continue to increase. And there's enough equity with a lot of folks right now that people can afford for values to go down a little bit. But if you get caught waiting 3 years, and then now you still owe them the equity after 3 years, you're opening up a whole can of worm and wounds that now they've got to dig back into and decide on what's the accurate value. So I always say, determine that now, set it now, have it be in writing. that's what you guys agree upon. And then when you deal with that in 3 years, then you deal with whatever has happened in 3 years, plus paying down the mortgage and what so forth. Now they're their own entities, they're both not paying into the mortgage. It just makes it super, super sticky. And I just recently came across a client to where the attorney was suggesting the complete opposite. And when I explained it to him, he's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And then when I explained it to the attorney's like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. They don't think about our world the way we think about our world. So keep in mind, it's not ignorance. It's just a different wheelhouse, guys. And we just have to be super educational about it. I found this was interesting. When divorce damages your credit, the number one reason for a divorce is not infidelity. Sometimes that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, but a lot of it is finances, guys. Not that you could do anything about it now, but it's just good to know. And I love little pieces of nuggets like this, but 59% of all divorces, finances played the role in the breakup. But it shows why, because we're not getting to the sticky part of relationships and knowing the ins and outs. And I'll be honest, with permission, I pulled credit on my husband right away because I was like, I need to know what I'm getting into. So, but that's just who I am. But 47% of folks did not know what their partner's credit score was until marriage. Like, that shocks me. Now, would I behave differently prior to being a divorce designated lender? No, I probably wouldn't have been. Maybe I would have, I don't know. But I'm much more stricter about it now than I would have been years ago. 36% of folks are not aware of student loans in a marriage. And I see this a lot. And this is daunting. It is daunting for anybody who's going to school and has student loans. It is even more daunting for those that didn't. This is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. You had 53% that said they were not financially compatible with their partner. And I believe that. Now, and to a lot of folks' defense, and Dave Ramsey is a big teacher of this, you have two types of people. You have your free financial people, your flighty financial people. Oh, I've got money. I still have my debit card that works, or something like that, right? I used to be, oh, I still have money. I still have checks, but nobody writes checks anymore. And so then you have your rigid, bills are paid on time, strict about budgeting, blah, blah, blah. Most of your couples are one or the other. And so with that statement of 53%, absolutely. Do I think that's going to change? No, you're not going to have two people that are very budget-like, because those are two very different personalities. 23% of them reported financial losses at $50,000 or more after they went through divorces, and 34% of them stated divorce financially ruined them. And I hear that a lot. More so with women. It's been shown that women will, their net worth is half after divorce, while a male's net worth is I think it's 25% higher after divorce within 2 years. And so there's a lot of discrepancy there. There's a lot of money that plays out into a divorce. I always give my clients the advice, because I would have wanted this advice. When it comes, if you hire an attorney, keep everything in mind that every action costs $1. Sending an email costs your client. And that's on you too. So when dealing with an attorney, you keep it brief, to the point, not emotional, because every response from that attorney is costing your client. And so clients love to get on the phone with their attorney and boo-hoo about whatever circumstance they have. And that attorney is just racking money up like a therapist. They could care less about that. So they will, any extra response they have to do, they will make sure that you pay for it, meaning the clients pay for that. All right. A couple things just to kind of keep in mind. Ending the marriage did not relieve financial stress. So we're trying to help them accomplish their homeownership goals and their financial goals, and the divorce is not the end game. So we have this is where we get down to, you have 39% of your folks that will not purchase again, or will not, sorry, get remarried again. There's a huge number that if the woman loses the home in a divorce, meaning she doesn't get to keep it, that only 25% of them rebuy again as a single entity. So, what our main goal is to protect homeownership, to protect the lifeline of homeownership. And so part of this whole presentation revolves around that. And making sure that we are helping them meet their financial goals, which nobody wants to be a renter, including them. They may want to step back and figure out what they want to do. And one of the staggering things too is that those that keep the home, in my experience, those that keep the home, 70% of them sell within 3 years. So these are people including me, these are people you want to stay in front of and stay in constant communication. And I always kind of laugh that if people were following me, because I'm a firm believer that life events create housing events, and you want to be which part of your which part of the housing events do you want to be part of their life events on? And so you can pick and choose those. I mean, some people focus on marriages and babies as creating housing events. I focus on marriage and divorces, because I'm recently both, well, not recently divorced, but recently married. And then some people focus on estates as being another life event. So there's various life events that create housing events. And if somebody was watching me from 2015 until present, between myself and now husband, I think I've had 13 to 14 housing events. I was a gold mine for the past 8 years. So that's where you guys have to get really in tune, because your divorces are the biggest shakers that you're going to run into, because you have both of them moving, and they're moving at rapid speeds, trying to gain some sense of norm in which housing is going to come into play. One thing I don't want to forget is how home ownership revolving around our children. And the domino effect that divorce has around it. Owning a home compared with renting leads to a higher quality environment for children. Cognitive outcomes are 9% higher in math, 7% higher in reading level for children who are in owned homes. Behavior problems are lower if the child resides in an owned home. And findings are similar regarding of gender, number of siblings, location of the home. And I see this firsthand, to where, even in my own circumstance, to where his ex is a renter and she gets notice that she has to move out. And now in order to find what she needs and what she can afford, it's like 35 minutes away. Now we've got a 17-year-old driver who has a job and school, and then going to a vocational school at night, now adding an hour to her time, and it's stressful. And so owned home is more permanent now than ever, I think, with the rates where we're at now. And I hate saying the word permanent, but before rates were where they were, we sat in this 15-year of average of 4 to 5s. And so for somebody with constant equity, and for somebody to go, oh, I don't really like my house, or I don't like my neighbor, or I don't like the layout, or I don't like the schools, people would just pick up and move. Not a problem. You have a life event, pick up and move. Not a problem. Well, right now, as equity slows, and you've got the weighing of your interest rate being fantastic, people aren't moving as often or as much as they once did. So it's offering a bit more consistency than it has in the past, I would say 15 years. Okay, lastly, if you're ready to target divorces, I got some ideas for you. It's not what you think. It's not attorneys. Not to say that they don't work, right? Attorneys can definitely be an avenue, Mind you, you usually have to pay $200 to even meet with an attorney as a consumer, and they love to charge that to you just to take up their time. So even 8 years after doing this, I work with probably 10 attorneys that send me steady business, and I say one a month. And I have to put a nugget every single month in their brain that goes, hey, this is something I can do. Oh, here's a circumstance. So the attorneys are the hardest group to reach out to. And that's because when the whole divorce designated game came out, probably 10 to 12 years ago, everybody had this letter that this attorney wrote that they sent to attorneys and started marketing to attorneys, and attorneys were like, yeah, I'm good. So they weren't even getting back to them or even seeing a need. Keep in mind, attorneys don't think of us the same way we think of them. They don't think of us as being a crucial part of their business. So it takes time to build that, in my opinion. Again, as I said, you guys have it. If you decide to go this route, you guys have it the hardest. And I was writing it out and I totally missed writing out my second, where it's divorce is the second most stressful thing besides death that someone can go through. And so the question is, do you have the bandwidth to deal with that? And when I say I'm dealing with 20 to 30 divorces, they're at all stages, and this is monthly, all stages, to where they're within the 91 days, they're within the 6 months, they're within the 9 months, or it's gone on to 2 years. And so, if this is something you want to focus on, I'm all for that. But understand the flip side of it is making sure you have the bandwidth emotionally, physically, intellectually to deal with divorces, because they are draining. They're definitely high maintenance. Okay. And making sure you're setting your boundaries, limiting your calls. A lot of my divorces, especially when I know how they're going to go, I always go, hey, I've got just 15 minutes. Let's tackle this. So I try to put a timer right before I'm talking to people, just so that they can respect my time. And in order for them to respect my time, I have to respect my time. Some of the sources where I get divorces, my number one is fear. If I challenge you guys to go on your Facebook page and ask, do any of my friends on here know of someone going through a divorce? Your answer is right there. Okay. The answer is yes. They know someone going through a divorce. And going through a divorce, because it's so stressful, if you've gone through a divorce, that's all you think about. The number one concern for every divorce client that I speak to, their number one concern is, what's next? What does my life look like? What does my finances look like? They are completely consumed with the chess mode, with what's my next play in most cases. And they're consumed with the uncertainty of divorce, including my own. I felt that way all the way through. I couldn't sleep. It consumed me. It consumed my life, my brain, my emotions, everything, because I had it all at play. Okay. And so when you're doing that, your client's reticulator system is going off strong with heavy emotion. And people make decisions based on two things, pain and pleasure. Right now, this is all painful and they want it to end. And so we want to be a beacon and a source for them to just get through this process with as much mental stability as possible and as much resource. So when that reticulator system is activated, and I don't know if you guys know what a reticulator system is, but just to give a clear description, is that think about the car that you drive right now. Before you drove that car, you likely did not think or see that car often on the road. But the minute you got that car, you saw that car everywhere, and you still do. May not be as strong as it was when you first got it, but you definitely still see that car everywhere, and you recognize your car every time you see it. I thought I was buying a unique vehicle. I thought I was buying a newer, unique vehicle. And the next thing you know, I saw it everywhere. And so that is the reticulator going strong. That reticulator works very, very well when you're dealing with anyone buying a home. Again, buying a home is also a stressful thing, but this is more pleasure. And if you get that reticulator activated, you can keep it activated to send you referrals for the next year or two, depending on how long you keep it activated. You have to help them keep it activated. So going back to the divorces, you're gonna keep that reticulator system activated, and don't hesitate, because they say that if your friend or a close family member is going through a divorce, you are 10 times more likely to go through a divorce. So we want their friends too. We want to be able to be of service to their friends. So when you're hanging up with somebody, don't hesitate to ask the question, who is close to you that would benefit from speaking with me? Always, over and over. Who is close to you right now that would benefit from speaking with me? It could be a parent that just wants some reassurance for their daughter or son, etc. Okay. So your sphere, knowing this is your specialty, is going to be your number one referral partner on this. And it is my number one referral. I target my sphere through both my database and Facebook and social media. There are a lot of divorce groups. Most of these, the realtors have caught on and started their own divorce groups, or lenders have caught on and started their own divorce groups. So you have to be very, very careful marketing on them, but feel free to try to join them. And then when you have people talk about divorces, then you can private message them to offer assistance. I would not do it on the public forum, because likely that realtor who started that group will kick you out. Or start your own group. There are plenty of mom and women groups out there that you can be an entity or a beacon for divorces. Buy and sell groups, I find male realtors have a bit more luck in that, when you have people selling stuff, and sometimes they'll make comments of like, wife cheated on me, I'm selling all of her things, which isn't really allowed, but they do. To where, you know, a male realtor can jump in there. Unfortunately, guys, you don't have feelings that go online. And so there aren't a lot of male divorce groups. There's co-ed divorce groups, but not a lot of male divorce groups. So feel free to start your own, and I would love to help be part of it and any success with it. But there's just not, you know, guys just don't jump online the way that women do and express their feelings on stuff and ask questions. So not pinpointing you guys out, but there's just not the same camaraderie among women and mom groups as there are men, FYI. So you can farm divorce filings. You can get that from your title company and start farming them. They usually only have addresses. Be very careful on what you're marketing. Keep in mind, most of these people have families. Sometimes by the time you're sending them a piece of mail, there's a chance the other party may not even know. There is also a chance the kids may not know. So be very careful about the marketing pieces you're sending out. We do have a great system to where if there are certain clients in certain areas or neighborhoods, I can kind of pull their list, pull their like likely to sell based on their online activity. We have a likely to sell report that may coincide with this report to just kind of go, okay, these guys may want to sell. I want to direct my marketing towards them. Or if you have somebody that you know you want to hone in on, we can do the same and help with that. Divorce attorneys, I've already talked about that. It's perhaps the hardest. But going back to your other sphere, you know, insurance companies. So we want to educate our insurance companies. When there are changes on a policy, what does that mean? Somebody's removing someone on a policy, likely there's a divorce. We want to know that information. Financial advisors, same thing. Beneficiaries changing, same thing. Therapists, why not? That often is a common thing, that therapists, although they have to be confidential, they can still give resources. Bankers, you know, your tellers who are at a bank who are being removed from accounts. Did you know, at least in Colorado, to be removed from an account, you do not need the other person's permission to close an account? I just found that out. I thought that was kind of staggering. Accountants, when you have accountants, and feel free to be tapping into our accountants as well when it comes down to capital gains and when clients should be they're, when they're selling and they're facing capital gains because of equity growth, sometimes it may make sense for them to file another year's taxes together instead of separately, to avoid capital gains. So that's when you're going to want to tap into your accountants, but also tap into your accountants when they have people who are like, hey, I'm looking at filing, by myself. I'm in the process of a divorce. Junk removal companies. That's a good indicator for just selling property, but junk removal companies is a good one, as they know when people are trying to clean up their property to sell, or they're getting rid of the other spouse's stuff and what have you. Hairstylists, they know all the gossip. Anybody in the esthetician world and hairstylist world know gossip. And then contractors, these people are coming across people who are talking about their situation. Again, that reticulator system is going off. Most people talk about their divorce, especially women. So most people are talking about it. So your key is just getting in front of those people, and those people knowing that this is what your specialty is. And overall, it's going to be consistency. If you're going to come out of the gate and say that you're a divorce specialist, you need to have it from top to bottom. And so I've made that very clear in my message, that is what I do. And my focus is divorce and veterans. And those are my two niches that I stay all over. Can I do other things? Absolutely. But this is what I'm really, really good at. Lastly, thank you. I'm going to open it to questions and see, where I can be of help. So fire away on what you guys got for me. You guys usually have good questions. And I also want to let you know the second highest divorce filing is January. And that's all stemming from the holidays. And you'll also see October be a pretty high divorce filing, and that's usually once kids are like raring into school. But January is common, and unfortunately, most people notify their family and kids during the holidays or right after the holidays, like when their kids are on break. So, what kind of questions can I answer? Let me see here. And feel free to go off mute to ask a question. But Tanya asked, do people ever take a HELOC out in order to pay off their spouse in order to stay in the house? And yes, Tanya, right now, that's the technique. That's the tactic we're taking. Just because I don't, in order to try to protect family wealth, if the other spouse is not adamant about being off title, and I would never tell a spouse to take off title and stay on the loan. That's just bad advice. No matter how good it feels on the other side, it's dumb advice to them. So if that other spouse is not, if they're not able to refinance because they're trying to protect family wealth a little bit or what so forth, then the next best option is home equity line of credits and possibly refinancing down the line. So we're seeing that a lot. I do have this recorded, so anybody who had to break off early, I'm gonna have it uploaded to YouTube. So I'll have that uploaded to YouTube. I'd love to hear anytime you guys have fallen into a divorce situation that you felt you had a unique outcome. I'd love to hear it, just for our own learning. Bueller.
Hey, this is Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
I didn't really have like a unique experience with it. It was actually pretty good. I actually kind of liked it. That's why I was intrigued to come to this webinar. It was a lot more work though, because they had restraining orders on each other. So one, you couldn't meet with them together, and heaven forbid if they were on the same text feed or the same email feed. So it was twice the amount of work, but it worked out pretty well. And I think it is a good niche to get into. I've been kind of thinking about getting into it as well. So this was really beneficial. And yeah, maybe reaching out to you for some more information, because this looks like something I think I might want to try and do.
Yeah, I love it. So it's, it's the good, the bad, the ugly, but I absolutely love it. And and again, I love the ones that are amicable, you know, where you're like, oh, there's still like good people out there instead of trying to rip each other to shreds. But you know, I see it all. So it's a great niche to get into for sure.
Yeah, thank you so
Catherine,
much for the information. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Nikki. Go ahead, Tammy.
Catherine, I was just going to say, I've just never, even though I have the RCS D designation, I've never been able to work with both parties. Usually by the time I'm talking to them, it's just one party. They've already gone through or filed, you know, their paperwork, or they've been through court and they're just having to sell their home. And then each party wants their own person. So it would be nice if there was a different, you know, to be able to get in contact with those people earlier, but I've just not, it's been difficult to do.
Yeah. And I think that also, that boils down to the marketing approach on just trying, it boils down to them seeing your value in the beginning. That's been my hardest thing, just trying to get the word out to, be it attorneys, be it insurance, be it what so forth, is that the value of them getting in touch with me first, because then I can, and if it's amicable, then I can be like, hey, I've got one realtor that you need to speak with. But you have to, in the same breath, I do see the same thing you do, Tammy, to where they use their own, and some of that is their own like financial freedom from each other, even when it's amicable. So, but you know, when you go to sell that home, you're still dealing with both, if that's the case. So, all right, any other situations or questions? Well, if you think of something, again, I challenge you guys to jump on Facebook and just ask that simple question of who do you know going through a divorce? Don't even ask like, who do you know that I need to know going through a divorce? Just ask that question, and you're going to find there are more people than you think. I also, when targeting divorces, divorce attorneys, I've found a few nuggets, because the key is like, gosh, do I just call this divorce attorney and be like, hey, you know, I'm a divorce, you know, I specialize in divorces. And attorneys and buyers alike, they don't care about any designation, just to let you know. They're not really focused on that. And heck, the divorce designated class I taught back in 2015 and 18 is so outdated, it doesn't make any sense. So I pretty much had to revamp the whole thing, which I have to get then credit approved. And by the time I get it credit approved, it's going to be outdated again, because our market is so shifty. But you know, they just want to know that you have the experience and the resources and the ability to connect them to the people that they need to be connected to. And so if I can offer any assistance, that's my wheelhouse. It's something I love. And yeah, I appreciate you guys coming. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me just at team@loanfit.us or Facebook or whatever. But I'd love to hear any outcomes. That's what I was going to do, and I got squirrely. Another thing I did in these mom groups love, and even like your community groups, like Loveland Community, Surprise Community, etc. They love to offer recommendations. So I'll go in there and be like, looking for a good laser hair removal, a plumber, and a divorce attorney. Man, you'll get the woodworks, right? Everybody's referring them. And then it's really easy to go, oh, you know, you recommended your attorney, your divorce attorney. Was this your own personal experience? Can you tell me a little bit about it? Sometimes you'll undercover if they're, because keep in mind, most people sell within 3 years, because especially if they keep the house, they feel like the house, you know, they'll try to renovate it, fix it, make it their own, but it's still putting lipstick on a pig. To them, it's still pig. So they'll end up selling it pretty quick. Or within 3 to 5 years. And so, you know, staying in touch with those folks, you know, that they're either on their way of divorce, they've gotten a divorce. So now we need to watch them for housing activities or life events that will cause housing activities. It was good seeing you, Tammy. Thanks. And so I would get on the community groups, and it becomes easier to contact your divorce attorneys by going, hey, Joe Smith Joe Smith is a friend of mine, and he recommended you as a divorce attorney. I'm an agent that specializes in divorces. And so now you've got a personal warm recommendation that is often harder to get with like a letter or an email or what so forth. And your biggest gatekeepers in your attorneys are your paralegals and the front desks. They still have those. We don't anymore because of COVID, but there are definitely gatekeepers with attorneys that pre-screen their phone calls, their emails, man, I need to get a team like that. Okay, never mind. But there's definitely gatekeepers in that business, whereas ours are not as relevant anymore. So yeah, if there's anything I can do to help, just tap me in. And I appreciate you guys coming. Have a good one.